ADHD Rewired, episode 477. This is the podcast for those of us with really good intentions and a slightly wandering attention. I'm Eric Tivers. I'm a licensed clinical social worker by training and a coach by design. I'm your host, and I have ADHD. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community. We are wired for connection, and you are not alone. Go to ADHDrewired.com to learn how you can join us in our free and secret Facebook group. Get additional resources for every episode, including links to any resources we mention on today's show. You can support us on Patreon, sign up for our email newsletter. You can request podcast postcards to distribute to your clients and support groups. Learn all about our award-winning coaching and accountability groups. You can co-work with us in our Adult Study Hall virtual membership community. You can do all of these things by going to our website at ADHDrewired.com. We know that starting is the hardest part, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of ADHD Rewired. Today's guest is Perran Mitchell. Perran is the crafter of stories and maker of things. Comics are his favorite medium and have been for as long as he can remember, which that might not say much, though. I mean, that's 5 minutes ago. I don't know. Growing up with ADHD, dyslexia, and anxiety, comics not only fostered a love of reading, they were the key to learning to read. Took a circuitous path to writing comics by first graduating from Drexel University with a degree in information science and technology. Every term, he took at least one class for himself that had nothing to do with his major. This led him to accidentally minoring in philosophy and nearly attaining a minor in literature. He uses these various interests to inform his writing. All right, so T, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so tell me about your ADHD story, when you were diagnosed and kind of what it was like for you growing up.
So I was diagnosed in first grade. I had a pretty bad experience with the class I was in. I just was always distracted. And then when my dyslexia came up when we're writing our names and I wrote Mott and the teacher had a quite negative reaction to that, my folks could tell there was something wrong. So they got me tested, and there was a lot of push and pull with the school district at the time. They put me into a class for kids with any sort of disability, which mainly was emotional disabilities, which luckily most of my memory of that is sort of foggy for self-preservation, I think. And then my parents discovered this private school. It's no longer open, but it was called Crossroads in Malvern, Pennsylvania. And I went there, and they were really able to focus in because it was just for kids with learning disabilities. So they taught us a lot of tricks and tips along with the regular things you learn in school on how to, this is how to look things up. This is where, you can't think of a word or can't spell a word. Well, the answers are all around you. Here's the places to look. Different little math tricks, and it was a good experience, and it was also nice being around kids that were like me. So that was pretty nice. And then eventually I graduated from that and went to regular high school and on to college, and then got in working world. And luckily my bosses are very understanding with my ADHD and give me some leeway, and we found the best way for me to work. So yeah, that's pretty much my journey.
How was college for you?
Oh, college was a bit of a mixed bag. Like, if it was a class that I was really interested in, I was there all the time. The work always got done. Sadly, classes that were my major tended to be less interesting. And there was a lot of creative scheduling to make sure I went back to classes that I need. One thing I learned was that study groups were a must for a lot of these classes. And if I could get a good group together where I was accountable for them and accountable to them for group projects or just studying, it really made the world of difference because I would show up for them. Where for myself, I'm living in the city. There's always something to do. Drexel has this interesting program, the co-op program, where you work 6 months at a job and you get paid like a regular employee and everything, and then you go to class for 6 months.
Huh.
Well, my class's schedule was in the spring and summer. So it was always gorgeous out and stuff to do, and you just wander around the city. Or I had friends from other schools who are free and like, hey, you want to go do? So it was easy to not attend, and I kind of did myself a little disservice there. But if it was classes that I was interested in, like literature or poetry or philosophy or any more of the social sciences or creative writing, I went to those pretty regularly.
So what was it about those that, like, why didn't you decide to major in something that you were more interested in?
Um, Fear of making a living, really.
Mm.
It was when I was in high school, I got an internship at a software company. I started working in quality control, and I was found like I had some aptitude with computers. So it was something that I knew I could do. I enjoyed more on a surface level. The deeper I got into it, the less I found I enjoyed it. But the time I started college, there was it was right before the bubble burst. It was huge economic opportunity. They were telling us that when we graduated, there's going to be 10 jobs for every one of us that graduated. And then when I graduated, it actually had inversed, where there was 10 of us for every job. Luckily, the company I had interned for had a small project for me to come in and work on, and that was supposed to be a temporary thing. And in August, I will have been there 20 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay. So what's your day-to-day kind of work look like? What are you doing?
Um, I am running their quality control department, so I'll get like the changes to the software and a new build, and I'll design how the tests work and look through to find any problems or bugs. I also have a couple interns that work with me, and I'll kind of direct them and guide them, and then also talk to the developers about improvements and be a little bit of an advocate for the customers. Again, it's a mixed bag of some of it is really by rote and like tearing my hair out just to get through it. It does not, that part doesn't fit my ADHD really well. It's when I do find something and the problem solving of like, why did that happen?
Okay.
And I can really delve into that. That's when it's enjoyable. When I found most of the problems and we're just running through the baseline test over and over again, it is definitely hard work then for me to stay concentrated and focused.
It's interesting to hear you say that. So you've been with this company, you said, for 20 years?
Yes. Yeah.
And to hear you sort of talk about it, like you like it well enough, you don't love it. To hear someone with ADHD being able to sort of stick with one company for that long, like, how have you been able to do that?
Part of it is that I've known the people that work there forever. So they do give me a lot of leeway. My boss, when I was an intern, she had just started in the company, and we became friends that way. So having a boss you like, I have found through the co-op system, I found that is worth its weight in gold. I would not do this for any other place. A few years with when I started working there, my dad, when I was growing up, had worked part-time for them, and he transitioned to working full-time with them in a completely different branch. So we don't work directly together, but I get to see him every day at lunch. And that's a perk that no other job can really offer me. Huh. And the plan was always, well, I'll do this till my writing takes off. And, you know, you buy a house, you do these other things, and you have obligations, and I get married, and I have, you know, health issues, and they have really good health insurance. And suddenly I've had offers to move to different companies doing kind of the same thing, but the perks aren't there. I don't know how ADHD friendly they'll be. Coming out of the lockdown, I had an opportunity to get my own office, which has made a world of difference. Being able to shut the door when the support staff is getting loud, or people decide to have an impromptu meeting in the hallway. When I was in a cubicle, that just killed my work. That would
drive me nuts.
Yeah. Noise canceling headphones, I have them on with some sort of music playing all day long. I mean, I feel like there's like indentation around the ears from them.
What kind of noise canceling headphones do you like?
I'm using the Bose Quiet Point, I think 30. Before that, I was using the Audio Technica versions. They all seem to be more or less the same because they're better than nothing, but they're not really designed to cancel out people talking.
Yeah.
But a wooden door closed really does the trick.
And I even have on my door. I used weatherproofing around the seam of like where the wood part of the door in the middle meet. So when I close the door, you hear this like.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a really good idea.
It does. It actually does make a big difference. And like between that and having, I'll wear the Bose noise canceling headphones when I'm just working. I have these other ones on because it's more like raw sound, so I'm actually hearing more of what's actually being recorded. But yeah, that's because I get distracted by the smallest noises. It's like my brain just if it's an irrelevant noise to what I'm doing, my brain just turns the volume up on it.
Yes, I'm right there with you. And I even have, depending on the task, different playlists because of what will distract me or won't. I have a friend who's a musician and I love his music, but he has a very distinct enunciation. And I'm like, I can hear the words of your song too well. I can't listen to it work because I'm thinking about what you're singing. So it's a lot of classical and jazz when I have like to really focus in. If it's something where I'm just running routines or automated testing, I can have words, or even if it's just updating systems, I can do a podcast. But
I was actually thinking as you were saying that, I'm like, because I like to listen to music too sometimes when I'm doing some writing, but it has to be like instrumental music. But I was wondering, I listen to a lot of jam bands, and I was wondering if I'd did a search for like jam bands, but that aren't in English, if like that would also work for me.
I do have a few songs on my writing mix that aren't in English, so I do no idea. It's just the voice becomes another instrument. I have a Rufus Wainwright sings a song for Moulin Rouge, and it's all in French, and I'm like, this sounds great. I don't know a lick of French other than the words that transfer over from English, so this is fine.
So let's talk a little bit about your writing. So how much of your time do you get to actually spend writing?
Not nearly as much as I'd like. Right now, my wife has a different sleep schedule than I do. So in the morning, on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings, that's my like writing time. I'll also steal a little bit of time at work during lunch and write, or I have a writing group that meets twice a month and we get a little writing done then. But, there will be Saturdays where it's just my brain is just not locking in, and everything needs to be done other than writing. Or if I have like marketing writing to do or stuff that's not creative.
How long will you give yourself when you're having that like, you've got the time in your calendar, you sit down to do some writing, but your brain is just not cooperating? Like how long will you give yourself until you say, all right, I'm going to do something else?
Probably a lot less time than I should.
Like
I get distracted pretty easily and weed off. And that's one of the problems being my own boss, because I can just be like, okay, well, that can get pushed off. I'm working on putting together a Kickstarter for down the road, and like the script for the project's done. So it's just writing like the updates that I'm going to be sending and all that sort of stuff. And it's easy to be like, well, you know what? I'll read something for 5 minutes, or I'll play a video game for 10 minutes, which
Can you actually do that?
No. I definitely over the years have discovered that time blindness, once I realized that was a thing, I am hard of time. Everything takes about an hour in my head and nothing takes what I think it's going to.
I'll share with you a quick strategy that I've been using more and more as I've been doing more writing, and then we'll take a quick break. So when I sit down and I got some writing that I want to do, and it's often like marketing type of writing, and I'm looking at that blank screen, and I'm just like, I have like 1,000 different thoughts. I don't know what to write. Like I'm not really feeling inspired at this particular moment. I will literally write that, right? Like And so, like, within maybe 3 or 4 sentences of writing variations of, I'm sitting here writing and I don't know what to write. I could write about this, but I don't really like, and then it just starts happening. I was like, oh, this trick kind of works.
I've done that a few times and it really does.
Like, it's one of those tricks that's like, really? That sounds too easy to work. Like, no, it actually works. So, all right, let's take a quick break. Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, that's what happened. I mixed the word break and back, and we'll hear more about your comics. So we'll be right back. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our award-winning intensive coaching and accountability groups. You meet 3 times a week for 10 weeks with daily accountability. Learn more about our coaching and accountability groups by going to coachingrewired.com. We just started our spring season last week. Summer sessions start July 7th, and if you've been waiting for this summer to join us, make sure you're on our interest list early and get signed up early, because this summer, we might only be offering 3 sections. We still have some things to figure out on our end, and as always, we will let you know as we know more. Get a head start on registration by going to coachingrewired.com to add your name to our summer interest list. That way, you can be kept in the loop when we release our summer schedule and get notified about our summer registration kickoff event. Make sure you're on our interest list because registration is by invitation only. Come grow with us. Go to coachingrewired.com. That's coachingrewired.com. Support for ADHD Rewired comes from our patrons over at ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. When you join our Patreon community at $5 a month or more, you'll gain access to uninterrupted episodes with ads at the end of the show. That way, if you still want to keep up with what's going on with ADHD Rewired, you won't have to miss out on any announcements or upcoming events. Really, a huge thank you to our Patreon community for supporting us. It feels great feeling supported, and I'm glad that I can give back just a little more to our patrons because you really do help keep this show running smoothly. And if you're a $10 or $25 a month patron, I posted a message on our Patreon page just for you about last week's Patreon coaching call. If you're considering becoming a patron because the work that we are doing has helped you on your ADHD journey in some way, go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. That's Patreon. Perks start at just $5 a month. Join us on our monthly coaching call at $25 a month and hear the audio of that call for just $10 a month right in your favorite podcast app. And support can start at any amount that makes sense to you. Become a patron, go to ADHDrewired.com/Patreon. And thanks, everyone. You know, we're like 480 episodes in, and I still am learning to talk. Okay. All right, we are back with T. Perran Mitchell. All right, T. Let's talk about your comics. So when we first talked, you said that part of your comic writing is you are kind of recreating the manifestations of you and your ADHD and different sort of elements of your life. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. One of my first full length comics was this Chronicles of Talnar. I wrote it out and I went back and looked at the main character, Sophie, and the adventure she goes on. And she is completely my ADHD, just personified. She has very little impulse control. She is going to dive right in without thinking. She comes up with a plan. She's like, I'm going for it, and does not think. And it's that adrenaline that she kind of feeds off of. So it is fun for her, but it's not necessarily the safest or the best way of going about things. It's a fantasy comic where she's part of this kind of sort of pseudo police type thing, and she's trying to rescue this town of people, and she winds up getting captured, and then she has to try to rescue herself along with them. It's just she has these plans and they don't go right because she doesn't think things through. And when she does take that minute to think things through, she's able to kind of get there. And by that point, she meets up with her rescuers, her companions who have figured out something was wrong. So there's a lot of that. And I think with all my writing, when I look back at it, I can see what part of myself comes in. And a lot of it, because I am so defined by my ADHD or my anxiety or these different struggles I have, that comes shining through.
So in any of your comics, are you explicit about ADHD or anxiety, or is it more like the storyline, the character, the decisions, the narrative?
It is more about the narrative and the decisions. I have been toying with some ideas about making a character explicitly ADHD, but making that a narrative that actually is works and interesting. And I haven't been able to crack that yet, but there are some kind of percolating in the back of my head. Right now, I've been working on a series of one panel comics where I'm focusing on emotion, and it's more of where I'm talking directly to the audience, and it's like these kind of almost positive affirmations and things like that. But I'm using their photo-based comics, so I'm taking pictures of like Warhammer or D&D miniatures that I've painted, and then I take pictures. So it's this horrible looking monster who's like, you were more capable than you realize, and that sort of stuff. And it's fun. It's fun. And I've been pretty good. I'm amazed that I've actually been able to put them out every Tuesday since October, I guess. And it's been more or less on time. And every week I'm like, oh, you know what, Saturday, I'll backlog a bunch of these. And then now it's Sunday morning. I'm like, oh, what do I write about? What this week?
So what is your workflow then?
Generally I will during the week. One thing my wife and I enjoy is we will paint these minis together. She has her set, I have mine.
I just love how nerdy and like that sounds, and the fact that you and your wife do that together is fantastic. I love that.
Oh, it is. I mean, she is a good. We are a good match because we like all the same sort of nerdy stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so we'll do that, and it's. I find it really stress relieving, and then I'll take some time, take some photographs. I'll bring them in to Photoshop, size them, put them into Illustrator where I do all my lettering. One of the things I do in comic creating is I do some freelance lettering where I take all the words in the script, which luckily they've all been spell checked and oriented correctly. So they've already been edited. Don't have to worry about that. And then I put them in Illustrator. I put them to a font and I match them and really focus on like the flow of the eye and make sure everybody is attributed correctly. So I take those skills and place them to these comics. And in Word, I'll write up just because the nice thing is it's just a few word balloons because it needs to be kind of big and easy to see on your phone. That's one of the things I like about writing for comics is it is very compressed storytelling. Because you have the page count to worry about. You have to make sure the flow and the pacing is right. And you have the visuals that can really bring forth a lot of the story and do a lot of the heavy lifting. So the dialogue can be minimalized. And after I've written, I'll get the art back. I find myself just eliminating dialogue because I'm like, well, I don't need to say that anymore because it's shown so well. I think that's actually why comics helped me learn to read. Is because I could pair the visuals with the dialogue, especially the old like Stan Lee stuff, because his stuff is basically the characters are describing what's happening in the particular panel, and it's fast moving and that sort of stuff always made it easy to grab my attention. And then I moved on to all sorts of other books.
That gave you that context. When we first were talking, you mentioned something about having a pre-editor. What is that?
A friend of mine, she's in my writing group and somebody I've become friends with and trust. Like if I'm sending something off to an editor, like for an anthology or something like that, a script, or to an artist that I don't know well, I will send it to her first and pay her to go through and look for all the spelling mistakes and the grammatical mistakes and places where I've forgotten a word or I've combined two words or homonyms, which are the bane of my existence, or times when I put in the word one instead of who. And I don't know why my brain does that, but that's a common thing I do. And the spell checks and grammar checks, they're like, no, that's fine. That's a word. It's totally, you wrote, that's a totally a good sentence. Just doesn't say what you want it to say. She'll go through that, and she'll also offer some light content editing and stuff, but it's mainly that sort of copy editing. And then I feel comfortable sending it off to the editor or to the artist for them to look over and get that feedback, because I feel like it's been polished. I'm definitely anxious about my spelling. I think that all goes back to that experience in first grade when I reversed my name. Instead of Tom, it said Mott, and the teacher ripped it up in front of the class. I have that really put a kind of the anxiety in me about that, and fed my general anxiety disorder. And that's the thing that, I mean, because I'm always going to find something to be anxious about, but that's like my go-to.
So I'm curious, how do you give like direction, and how do you think through the directions that you're giving to an artist that you've never worked with before?
The way I do it, and that's the nice thing about comics, is that it is really just a letter to your artist, and there's no fast, like, it's not like screenwriting where it's like, this is the format that you use. Writers have all sorts of different formats you can use. What I do is I say, okay, this is the page, here are each panel, and I tend to write to the emotion, where I'll give very loose sort of like, all right, these are the two people that are here, this is the general action that's going on. But like if I'm writing a Talnar story, it'll be that Sophie is feeling apprehension about telling her boss that she let the guy escape, and that can be kind of, she's not doing a good job of hiding that. And I'll say that, and the artist can interpret that however they want. And I'm leaning on their skills. I'm leaning on them. And I think that's the thing that I like most about writing for comics, is that collaboration, because I have a pseudo picture of what's happening in my head, but it's very rough because I know whatever I think is going to come back different. It's going to come through this. And I'm really just inspiring the art more than dictating the art. I find that works really well. And then I can see what I can lean on their skills. And I'm also accountable to them. So it kind of gets the deadlines going.
You have really learned from college on how to leverage accountability to get yourself to do the things that you know you need to do.
Yeah. That's that seems to be the best way to get things done for me, is to have that, because I for whatever reason, being accountable to myself just does not work.
Well, it's I talk about this in my coaching groups. It's like when you have ADHD, saying that you want to be accountable to yourself is like saying you're in a wheelchair and you're just going to try harder to get up the stairs. Like, it just doesn't work, right? You got to use other methods.
Absolutely.
I'm curious to know, like, what your sort of plan and vision is kind of going forward. Because I think you said that, like, you would love to be doing more of this comic writing professionally. So, like, where are you at with? Is this kind of a hobby? Is this a side hustle? Are you making some money doing this?
I am. It's a business. I have made some money, but any money I make, I immediately put back into it to get more art. So I've never technically year over year made a profit. The pandemic and cons kind of changing really killed my sales opportunities. Mainly, I was selling through cons.
And when you say, I'm not familiar with what that is.
Okay, so it's like a comic book convention.
Okay.
Where it's like any other type of pop culture. You'll have like an artist alley.
Got it.
Everybody will get a table, they'll set up, and you're selling yourself as much as you are the books. And I found that somebody comes by, if they give me a little bit of the time of day and we get a good conversation going, they'll walk away with, they'll drop $5 or $10 and walk away with a book. But Kickstarter is a great way of funding. That's pretty much how I funded things so far. Yeah, and then you're kind of leveraging friendships and family who want to support you, but you're getting the things made. Ideally, the next project will make enough to pay for the following project. and kind of I want to get into that cycle where it is everything gets paid for, and perhaps I don't need to push so hard with the Kickstarters, or I can start. I'm still really anxious about going to a convention and COVID. My wife has some health issues. I have some health issues. So it's a little, it's still, I'm still real nervous about that. So I'm hoping I can break through that. And I'm also hoping that I can find a fan base is basically what I need. Is if I can get a fan base going that'll support me via Patreon, support me via Kickstarter, and want to buy whatever I put out, then it can become self-sustaining. There are just too many bills for it to become full-time anytime in the near future, unless I win the media lottery and somebody wants to license a thing I've written and put it on Netflix or a movie or a TV show, which I'm more than happy. I will sell out. You can do whatever. They can ruin it. I don't care. Because I'll just make the comics and they'll be what I want them to be, and that can be something else.
I love it. All right, let's take one more quick break, and when we come back, I want to hear about some more sort of tools and strategies that you are using to do the things that you are doing. So we will be right back. Are you new to ADHD Rewired? If so, welcome. If you're a long-time listener, welcome back. Because support for this podcast comes from you, our listeners. Do you want some answers to your ADHD-related questions? And you can join me and the rest of the ADHD Rewired podcast family and ADHD Rewired coaches every second Tuesday of the month for our monthly live Q&A on Zoom. Don't want to forget? Then go now to ADHDrewired.com/events to register so you can get notified about our next live Q&A on Tuesday, April 11th at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern. But wait, are you hearing about the ADHD Rewired podcast family for the first time? We have other podcasts here on the ADHD Rewired podcast network, including ADHD Essentials with Brendan Mahan, Hacking Your ADHD with Will Curb, and ADHD Diversified with MJ Siemens. And there's another one coming. It's coming soon. Find everything ADHD Rewired, including our adult study hall community for virtual co-working, our podcast archives, show notes, our other shows, and our coaching groups by going to ADHDrewired.com. It's all at ADHDrewired.com. And thanks for listening. All right, we are back with Perran Mitchell. All right, so I have I was curious, we were talking earlier about some of the writing process, and I have, I know a lot of other people have also recently fallen in love with ChatGPT. What are your thoughts about ChatGPT, and are you using it?
I'm not using it. I think it can be a tool to organize thoughts and put things out. I think that it's something that could be leaned on too much and you will get everyone sounding the same. I think for any type of creative writing, you'll want to rewrite whatever it spits out. You're going to need to make it your own. For me, that's just, I don't really have any interest in somebody else's or some AI's version of it. I'm going to just go the old fashioned way. I start out with a piece of paper and I kind of rough outline, and then I'll start typing that in and it'll sort of kind of resemble the outline. I'll weed off and make it my own thing. But I like the process of writing, that creative writing. In the writing group I moderate, the first thing we do is we'll just do a prompt and we'll take 15 minutes, and it doesn't have to be good, doesn't have to be finished. You just start writing and and then we'll read it to each other, whatever we come up with.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. So as I've been, I do a lot of marketing emails. One of the challenges is I have so many things I could write about that I get stuck and paralyzed by what do I write about? Right. So what I'll do is I'll actually ask ChatGPT about, give me 10 ideas of things I could write about related to, say, time, ADHD, and goal setting. And it will just list 10 ideas. And I'm like, all right, great. I can write 3 emails based off these ideas. And it just opens things up, and it really helps me from getting not getting stuck. Or if my other issues, I tend to over explain things, and something that probably could be said in 2 sentences that it took me 3 paragraphs to write. So I'll like take what I wrote, plug it into ChatGPT, and like shorten this by 50%. And then I'll see what it does. And then I'll kind of recraft it so it's more of my tone. So I really have viewed this as a writing partner. Right. And like the app, so I'm really just kind of currently fascinated with it because I tend to dread writing. And with this tool, I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. I'm kind of having fun with this. And I don't know if I've ever said that I've had fun with writing.
Well, it does sound like that's the perfect use for that sort of tool for that sort of writing. I do think the key is to, like you said, to recraft it for your tone. I've seen times when somebody just copies and pastes and they'll accidentally copy the bit that says this was from ChatGPT. And, sometimes that can be, if it's a serious matter, that does not go over well.
Well, and I remember the very first time I used it, it was a couple months ago. And I was like, and I was just wondering about the ethics of it. And I was like, I mean, I wrote most of this, but like, I got a lot of help from Chat GPT. Like, should I be like designated that somehow? Like, do I sort? Like, you know what I mean? Is there a citation like with help from AI? Like, I don't know.
I think that for that, because you're the customer, you're getting it from there, you're using it however you want. For publication in like a magazine or like students, there has to be some sort of way of keeping students from just using that to write a paper, because point of writing the paper was the process of writing the paper and thinking about your ideas and organizing them. Using the tool is great, but you're not really learning the thing you need to be learning. It doesn't demonstrate your knowledge either.
You know what I wonder if, because I've used it before where I'll copy and paste. I'll be like, all right, proof this for spelling and grammar. And I wonder if you added to it like homophones, like, check to see if I'm using the right or wrong homophones. Like it probably could do. I mean, it's been kind of mind blowing on what it could do.
Wow. Yeah, it might be something I'll have to make the time to play around with. Yeah. The thing I wonder about is novel use, where you're using a word in it that's not in the technical correct way, but it works, and how much that's kind of evolved language. I think back to like sharing a meeting wasn't a term till Shakespeare wrote it in a play, and then that became part of English.
The other thing that I love about it is that it remembers your prompts and like what you've been doing with it. So like you'll ask a question or to generate like some emails or some ideas about stuff, and it will include stuff that like I didn't even prompt it to do, but it like contextually made perfect sense. I was like, this tool just keeps getting better and better to me.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan.
That's awesome. No, I'm glad you're having so much fun and success with it.
What have you seen or tried any of the AI art tools?
No. I have some concerns about those. Mainly the art that it has been trained on is not properly sourced.
Oh.
And a lot of the artists themselves didn't give permission for the art to be used. And that's where I have a lot of concerns is, how was this thing crafted? Because the thing I've created, I can specify this is how I want it to be used. And if they're taking that and feeding it through this thing and they're using that art to generate new art, well, my labor isn't being, I'm not profiting from my labor. I'm not, I don't have control over my art. And that's not good. That's unethical. So that's where I have the problems with it. I think that's really in its infancy.
Yeah.
And I could very well see it sort of being something that is now a fad and kind of falls by the wayside until the next leap in the technology. And then it comes roaring back. And maybe it's something where it's just been trained on public domain art. So it's dicey. It's a dicey. There's a lot of angles. To say the least. Yeah. What I enjoy about making comics is the other artist and getting that feedback, which you're not going to really get from any of these AI art generators. I can say in my script, oh, I want this many panels, but combine panels or make new panels if you think it will push the story better, if you think it's going to, or I had a meeting with my artist on this current project I'm working on, and she suggested changing part of the beginning, completely reworking it to make it clearer and flow better. And it was a great idea. That's not something an AI will ever say to me that, hey, rewrite this section in this way because I think it would be better.
Interesting.
And yeah.
Huh. Yeah, no, it's I'd encourage you to just play with it a little bit, at least the chat GPT, because it's I've been finding it mind blowing. Tell me about some other just general tools that you use for managing your ADHD.
Calendar apps are a must. I put all sorts of different things and I set up multiple reminders. So it will go through and 5 hours a day out, 5 hours out, 1 hour out, 10 minutes out. Hey, you need to be looking at this thing. Another thing, I'm a big fan of tactile and paper. So I have a physical list of all the words that I use often that spell check just has no idea what I'm talking about. And having that handy and be looking at a glance. Our previous conversation, you clued me in on a great one that I have been using, which is voice to text for things I can't spell. And that has been a bit of a game changer.
You know, at first it was just cursive is the only tool to when you are writing something you can't spell, you just write in cursive, so it's not legible.
You know, that I've always had a terrible handwriting, and I realized that's why. It's to hide my bad spelling, because then people are just trying to figure out the handwriting and they're like, oh, it's just poor handwriting. Whatever, the spelling's fine. Because I'd much rather be accused of having bad handwriting than being a bad speller.
I've always been a just atrocious speller. It's it's interesting too because I probably do have some like mild form of dyslexia, not like the standard like I'm not swapping the D's and B's and kind of stuff like that, but like I will like misread words and I will like when I'm reading out loud sometimes I will read the words in a different order that are actually on the page, and like certain words like in my head like I read it like this word doesn't sound right. Like it's and there's a term for that. You know, like the hamburger. Like you say it after so many times, you're like this doesn't even sound like a word anymore. What is this?
Yeah, I think part of the problem I have with like spell check is that it just has it'll have this list of words, and I'm like, I have no
idea.
Suddenly, none of them have any meaning to me. I'm just like, maybe this one. I don't know. One of the things I do that I have to watch out for is I will start writing a sentence, think about the craft of the sentence, and wind up rewriting it halfway through. So I'm starting and ending with the same idea.
That sounds like my entire college paper writing experience.
Oh yeah, man. And it's something you just have to watch out for because you're putting the subject both at the beginning and the end of your sentence.
So what do you do to manage hyperfocus?
I will, again, timers are good. My wife's pretty good at letting me know when it's been long. We have 2 birds and they'll yell at us if we're not paying attention to them. If we're on to something else too long and we haven't come back to them.
Oh, interesting.
They'll let us know. But it is problematic. There's certain activities that I just make sure to avoid. I don't really check things like email or stuff like that at work, except during like these are the times that I'm going to check because I will get lost. And that was the beginning of my career. That was a problem. And we had some conversations about that, how like I would, I'm just going to read this article. And suddenly, I've been at work for 3 hours and I've done like 10 minutes worth of work. And that's not good for anybody. So I've kind of learned what to not start. And that's been a big thing in my life is identifying problems, trying to identify problems early. It's one of the reasons I've never drank. I've never really experimented with any substances because in the back of my head, what if I like this? Because that would be bad. Because moderation has never been a thing I've been good at.
Yeah, it's hard.
So I'm like, you know what? I'm not even gonna try that. And I realize I'm like, can I have instead of a D inhibitor, can I have an inhibitor to keep me sometimes from saying? And I do think I overcompensate it sometimes.
It sounds like you have a ton
of
of self-awareness, and you recognize your tendencies, both the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? And you sort of set up and manage life based on those things, and I think that's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's taken me 40 plus years to get all this in.
Yeah, it takes as long as it takes, right?
Yeah, and I'm still, every day I'm learning, and I tend to, especially from taking like all those philosophy classes and stuff, I'm very introspective, trying to figure out, okay, who am I? What's my place in the world? What is the world? And that sort of stuff. I was always fascinated by like Descartes' meditation and that sort of thing. And just once I realized, how easily our senses can be fooled, and it's a lot of, I live a lot in my head, sometimes a little too much, but
I think a lot of us can relate to all the things happening in our head. I mean, it's like a convention up there, like on a daily basis. So let's get people to your website. It's the letter T, Perran, Perran, Mitchell.com. Where else can people find your comics, learn about you?
I'm on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, all with the T. Perran Mitchell name. I'm trying out all the different new social media things, except anything that's not video, because I just a little too self-conscious to be do anything video wise.
Well, check out his website if you are into comics and are interested in reading about comics that have characters with ADHD or comics that talk about different emotions. Go buy his work. Support him. It's good stuff.
Thank you very much.
Any final thoughts you want to leave listeners with?
I think that it's just keep at it. Whatever you want to do, you do what you have to make a living, but whatever your interests are and keep trying new things is the key to everything.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your stories, and keep doing what you are doing.
Thank you.
This is Eric Tivers. Thank you for listening, and congratulations for making it to the end. ADHD Rewired is more than just a podcast. We are a community focused on learning, growing, and connection. The website is ADHDrewired.com. You can find time-stamped summaries and additional resources for each episode. Apply to join our free and secret Facebook community. Learn more about our award-winning intensive online video-based coaching and accountability groups. Join the Adult Study Hall virtual co-working membership community. Find all the other podcasts on the ADHD Rewired podcast network. Sign up for my email newsletter to get exclusive content that you won't hear anywhere else. And use the search tool to find episodes on specific topics. You can do all of this at ADHDrewired.com. While you're there, click on the Patreon button. If you are a regular listener, consider making a monthly contribution by becoming a patron. If you are able to financially support my work, it would mean a lot. This show is free to you, the listener, but it's not free to produce. Plus, patrons get cool perks like ad-free episodes and access to recordings of coaching calls, and $25 a month patrons can join me once a month for a group coaching call. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Tivers. You can like our Facebook page at facebook.com/ADHD Rewired. If you're a coach, therapist, or related professional, connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/Eric Tivers. Subscribe to ADHD Rewired on YouTube to see selective interviews and other videos I've made. Podcasts change lives. You can make a difference in someone's life by spreading the word about this podcast. Mention it in your online communities on Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, or wherever you hang out online. And be sure to share it with your friends, family, your therapists, your coaches, doctors, siblings, parents. And if you, your coach, therapist, doctor, or ADHD support group leader would like a pack of podcast postcards to hand out, you can request those at the website, ADHDrewired.com. If you're a member of CHAD, ADA, or any other ADHD support group, please be sure to tell them about this show and all the shows on the ADHD Rewired Podcast Network. You can even show them how to download it on their phone. And if you really loved this particular episode, please hit share on your podcast player. I'm only one person, and I do count on you to help spread this message. One of the biggest things that you can do to support this podcast and help other people discover it is to leave an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts or any other app that supports reviews. And don't forget to hit subscribe so new episodes are automatically pushed to your favorite podcast app. Looking for more ways to listen and learn? Get a free audiobook and a 30-day free trial at Audible by going to audibletrial.com/ADHD Rewired. Here is my list of must-listen-to audiobooks updated July 2021. Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Attached by Amir Levin and Rachel Heller. Atomic Habits by James Clear. The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Crucial Conversations by Carrie Patterson. The Coaching Habit by Michael Stainer. The Body Keeps Score by Bessel van der Kolk. Rest by Alex Sujong Kim Pang. The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. Make It Stick. The Science of Successful Learning by Peter Brown. The Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. Meditation for Fidgety Skeptics by Dan Harris. Change Your Questions, Change Your Life by Marilee G. Adams. I always recommend to my coaches and admin that they read that book. The One Thing by Gary Keller, a required reading for all of our coaching group members. Procrastinate on Purpose by Rory Baden. The 4 Tendencies by Gretchen Rubin. The Art of Asking by Amanda Palmer. And if you're looking for something a little bit more magical, I have fallen in love with the Harry Potter series, and the narrator, Jim Dale, is amazing. And of course, if you haven't yet boarded the Brene Brown bus, all of her stuff is great, starting with Gifts of Imperfection, Daring Greatly, Rising Strong, and The Power of Vulnerability. And if you're an entrepreneur or leader, be sure to check out her book, Dare to Lead. Do you have something that you would like to share? Click on the podcast tab at ADHD Rewired. Click the button to be a guest at the top of the page and schedule a 15-minute interview. This is Eric Tibbers, reminding you to keep learning, growing, and connecting. Self-care is not selfish. No matter what you get done or don't get done, you are still enough. And no matter how hard it feels, we can do hard things. And we don't need to do them in the hardest way possible. Thanks for listening. I'll catch you next week.